Yo, what is up, guys? Will here from Fantasy Flock Basketball with Canyon, and we are going through our updated top 12 guard rankings for the rest of the season. We've gotten to see around 10 plus games for most of these guys on this list, so I feel like we have a good initial thought of what you can expect for the rest of the season. A lot of guys are outperforming from an efficiency standpoint from what you expect for the rest of the season, but I still think a lot of what we've seen from guys currently warrants them being ranked and tiered at where they're at. So, Canyon, I'll throw it over to you. Who's first?
Yeah, first here should be no surprise. It's Luka Doncic in a tier of his own. I mean, this guy's incredible. He's playing at an MVP level right now, just carrying the Mavericks as much as he can. He's just going to get all the usage all season, averaging close to a triple-double. He's on 30-point triple-double watch every night. His bad games are like 24.66 in defensive stats. So just such a high floor and averaging 34, 8, and 8 with 2 steals and almost a block. Like, he's just on another level this year. Fantasy points per game, he's number 1, and it's not even close. We don't really have to talk about this much longer. It's clearly Luka.
100%. And yeah, he's in a tier of his own. We're going to get into the next tier. Honestly, just from a production standpoint, there probably should just be a blank tier below Luka and then another tier getting into the rest of the guys, because he is just currently far and ahead above everyone else. And I think even season-long expectations, you expect him to maintain that for sure on a per-game basis. But in the next tier, we've got Shea, SGA here, and he's been insane to start the season. He's been, kind of in that top 5, top 6 MVP conversation with just his numbers, flat out numbers he's producing right now. The offense runs through Shea. I will say you expect maybe a little bit dip, especially in the defensive stats. That's really, really impacting his scoring. But still, he's a great defensive stat guy. So it's something I could see probably not maintaining to, almost 2 steals and almost a block and a half a game. But still, I think you expect him to be, at least around there in that production. And the scoring might dip a little bit. He's shooting not insanely efficient from 3 or anything, probably the higher end of efficiency, anything plus 51, 52% for a guard like Shea is really impressive and hard to maintain throughout the whole season. But even if it doesn't maintain, you still expect it to be elite scoring, and the peripherals are solid enough where I think he for sure can be a top 3, top 4 guard rest of the season.
Yeah, he's another guy that's just getting so much of the usage there at OKC. They run so many different rotations, but SGA is always going to get his there. It's his team. Third here in the same tier, we've got Steph Curry, and honestly, he could be number 2 right now. He's just playing out of his mind, rebounding at an incredible rate, triple doubles on the season already, averaging about 33, 7, and 7 with a steal. This guy, I don't think the efficiency is going to remain as far as rebounding goes, but he's just been, obviously scoring at an incredible rate. We could see that continuing. Rebounding has been unbelievable, and high assists as well. He's just soaking up a lot of usage for what we maybe have expected with Clay and Poole being there. It's been some time, so I don't think Clay and Poole are really much dangerous to soak up Steph's usage. Even with them or without them, Steph's still putting up 30-point games with high assists and high rebounding. Maybe that rebounding does come down to about 5 or 5.5 near the end of the season, but I think he can be around 30 points and some higher assists this season. He's just been unbelievable to start the season, so he's there at number 3.
Definitely. Yeah, like you mentioned, those rebound numbers should dip, but that's kind of one of those things where from a, fantasy impact, 1 to 2 rebounds a game isn't super impactful to what Steph's doing right now. So, even if the scoring doesn't maintain what he's doing right now, it's certainly elite, and I expect it to be one of his highest scoring seasons, that we've seen from him, with just what we've seen from him up until this point. Then next up in a new tier, we've got Ja Morant. Ja Morant's kind of just picked up right where he left off last season, when he was playing and healthy. He's going to be around 27, 28 points with, pushing 6 and 6 rebounds and assists, potentially up to 7 plus in the assist department. That's been really solid from him last season and in the playoffs as well. And he's just one of those guys where, once again, we talk about a lot of these guards at the top of the list. It's just offensive usage is just monster. And, Ja's basically doing what he did last season, which firmly cements him safely as a top 5 guard.
Yeah, he's just kind of got the higher floor. It looks like the guys around him right now are kind of exceeding expectations or hitting their ceilings, and Ja, just feels like he can keep going, but he's been very safe and kind of consistent as to where he's probably been drafted or expected of this season. 5th here in the same tier, we've got Donovan Mitchell. A big surprise, this season heading into Cleveland with Darius Garland. Didn't think he was going to be this productive, and obviously without Garland, he was popping off. And it's like, okay, when Garland comes back from the injury, how is he going to fare? Still putting up incredible shooting numbers with Garland back, even assist numbers as well. So Mitchell definitely deserves this 5 spot, averaging over 30 points a game, around 6 assists in defensive stats. Been pretty efficient. I think the scoring will eventually come down, but I can't believe how well he's shooting the ball, and he definitely deserves to be up here. He's getting just a ton of looks on this Cleveland team, which is overall playing really well this season. And so it looks like him and Garland are a great match, and I think he could continue to be a high 20s points per game guy with some solid rebounding and assist upside as well.
Yeah, definitely. He's a guy who, you kind of feel like maybe even should be higher than fifth on this list with his start to the season. But he is fifth in fantasy points per game, up with the data we have pulled up here. And, like you had mentioned, you see the assist numbers dip a little bit with Garland. You just expect that. I think he's, about an assist and a half worse with Garland, but the scoring is still elite. Maybe he won't be a 31 plus points per game guy for the full season, but I think even if that dips, you expect high-end Utah Jazz scoring from Donovan Mitchell from what we've seen from him. This offense just runs through him, and, a lot of people are looking at like the emergence of Evan Mobley as an offensive weapon, but it's just hard to expect anything different from Donovan Mitchell just, scoring 25 plus points night in and night out. So he is a guy who I feel really comfortable having in this tier as a top 5 guard. And then next up here in a new tier, we have one of our favorite guys, just in general. I love Halliburton. We got Tyrese Halliburton here leading off this tier. He's 10th in fantasy points per game. He feels like he has such a solid floor. We saw a little scoring increase. That was kind of the expectation for Hallie heading into this season, just looking at the Pacers roster. And he has gotten that bump, for a guy who used to be a 16, 17, 18 points per game guy for the Pacers when he played there last season. Bumped up to, 21 plus. And we've seen that from him pretty consistently and still maintaining really, really solid assist numbers. He's pushing a double-double with points and assists averaging, which is just so solid. And then the defensive stats as well with Hallie. That's something that's, always really solid. It could even be higher, honestly. But yeah, he's just one of those guys who, even with the emergence of Ben Mathurin and you've got Turner playing there, he's just going to be such a high floor guard. I do think there's more upside. I think he feels like when you watch these games with Halliburton, you wish he was a little more aggressive offensively because he's still scoring pretty efficiently. He looks great when he's out there, but even if we don't see a huge bump up in overall field goal attempts or just offensive usage, he still is going to be a 21 and 10 guy, which is just such a high floor for a guard.
Yeah, he's definitely deserving of a top 10 spot. I think we have him here at 6 because I think he can be more aggressive. I think there is room to grow, and there's a lot of upside there for the scoring to continue to rise with such a high floor and assist and defensive stats as well. Next up here in the same tier, we've got Trae Young, around 28 points per game, 9 to 10 assists per game. Didn't really shoot the 3 balls that much to start the season. I think he only had a couple games with double-digit 3-point attempts, not shooting it very efficiently, but he's still managing to have around 27 points per game. He's still going to shoot the ball a ton. Him and DeJounte Murray are working pretty well together. I just like Trae's upside in scoring. I think he's got a higher ceiling to obviously pop off for 30 or 40-point games, and the assists feel really safe with him as well. He can be a 30-10 guy, which is pretty tough to come by. It's why, he has this elite standing here amongst the guards. I know he can be a little streaky, but I think he's got such a high ceiling with how much of a flamethrower he can be. And any guy that can, give you 30 and 10 on a night deserves to be in the top 10 here. So we've got Trae Young here at 7.
Yeah, and then right behind him in this same tier, we've got DeJounte Murray, his teammate, and he's actually been outperforming Trae from a fantasy points per game standpoint. A lot of that has to do with the peripherals that DeJounte Murray gets, just rebounding specifically, and then obviously the defensive stats. 2.3 steals to 0.8 from Trae is just it's a pretty big impact as far as fantasy points goes. But I do give the nod to Trae just season long consistency wise. But I still think Murray can kind of keep up what he's been doing, and it's kind of been pretty similar to what he did with the Spurs, honestly. And if you've got a guard who's going to give you pretty high rebounding for a guard, as well as really strong assist numbers and then decent scoring like we get from Halliburton as well, that's a guy who, should be a top 10 guy, especially when they tack on really solid defensive stats. So offensive usage wise, if you watch these Hawks games, obviously Trae Young is going to be a top 7 usage guy, but Murray's been up there as well, and I expect that to maintain. He's looked really good, and his current standing at 6th overall from a fantasy points per game rank at the guard spot isn't, impacted by like super efficient 3-point shooting. He's kind of doing a lot of similar numbers that he did with the Spurs over the past couple seasons. So I think it's something that he can maintain throughout the season.
Yeah, I think Murray has a higher floor maybe. on certain nights, Trae Young can have some dud nights shooting wise, but I think Trae Young's just got a bigger ceiling. But they're definitely going to be flip flopping as far as fantasy points per game goes. Last up here in this tier, we've got James Harden, currently dealing with that injury right now. He's been out for about a week or two. But he's been more aggressive this year. He's been shooting more. We liked him a lot in the preseason. I like how he's committing to this team. And, in games specifically with Embiid out, he's going to get a lot of work. But even with Embiid in, he's been more aggressive shooting-wise and assists as well. Only averaging 22 points per game this season so far, but that's with 2 games against the Raptors, a very good defensive team where he kind of struggled. But 7 rebounds, 10 assists. I think he can continue to be more aggressive. I think he can get those points numbers up to around 24, 25. And then you have, Harden, who's always going to be flirting with a triple-double or a double-double. So he could be like a 25, 8, 10 guy. Putting up so many stats across the board is so hard to find at the guard position, and Harden can do that night in and night out. But the interesting thing is he is injured right now. Don't think it's super long term. So when he comes back, I like him to be a bit more aggressive again. Get to mid 20s in scoring, and then again such a high floor in assists and rebounds, and then you sprinkle in a steal there as well. So we've got Harden here at 9.
Yeah, Harden and these kind of injured players are really hard to rank from a season-long standpoint because, fantasy basketball is such a long-term game. It is obviously going to be a pretty big impact, if Harden's out for the next couple weeks. But still, I think from a usage production standpoint, he probably should be up in the Donovan Mitchell, probably just even in the SGA Steph tier from a, fantasy production season-long standpoint with what we saw from him earlier in the season. But next up here, in a new tier, we've got Devin Booker, who's, just kind of picked up where he left off last season from a scoring standpoint. I think, just kind of looking at the Suns team, it would not surprise me if this is Devin Booker's highest scoring season he's had, building off of what we saw last season. And he's adding some, pretty stronger assist numbers than we saw last year. Obviously, it's not anything insane compared to a lot of the other guys in the top 12, so that's kind of why he's in this lower tier. Obviously, the scoring's elite, but, the rebounds and assists, a lot of those peripheral stats are just better. You have a little bit of a higher floor from the other guys on this list, but still, with the elite scoring a book gives you and what I expect from this season, he for sure should be in the top 12.
Yeah, he's a very consistent scorer, so he definitely deserves to be mentioned in the top 12 here. Much like the next guy here in the same tier, Damian Lillard, very consistent scorer, elite scorer, can pop off for 30 or 40 every night, just not high in those peripherals to kind of move him up the board more, averaging about 29, 5, and 5 right now. He's on a team with, a lot of offensive weapons now. They grab Jeremy Grant, Anthony Simons starting in the rotation, Nurkic is re-signed. So there's a lot of weapons there, and his assist numbers can go up in those peripherals, but it's still Dame's team. He's shooting so well from 3, shooting a lot from 3 right now. So he's going to be averaging high 20s in points. Elite scoring numbers with some decent peripherals, not elite peripherals, keeps him, under those top guys, but still definitely worth a top 12 nod with just how, elite he can be at scoring and from the 3-point as well.
Definitely. Then closing out the top 12, we've got another injured guy to close out this tier. We've got LaMelo Ball. Now, the expectation was that he would be back sooner than we recorded this video. Obviously, he has not played a game yet, but he is upgraded from out to questionable heading into tonight's game. So the expectation is LaMelo is back, if not tonight, very soon. So I think season long from a fantasy production standpoint, it would not surprise me if he was just in the Hallie, Trae, Murray, Harden tier that we have right now, if not bumping up to even the Donovan Mitchell, just with what we could see from a year 3 breakout from LaMelo. I think he could easily have a breakout, building off of the scoring increase we saw last season and have similar stat lines to what we're seeing from Murray this season. I think he's a guy who could definitely have strong rebounding for a guard and obviously the assist upside with a guy like LaMelo. And if you just look at this, Hornets team, it's gonna run through LaMelo. This is LaMelo's team, obviously, with Bridges not playing, but just with what we've seen from this team, I think you expect LaMelo to have all the opportunity and usage to have the year 3 breakout that everyone was expecting. Because if you guys remember, he was a first round draft pick for a lot of people before the injury in the preseason. So he was a guy with a lot of high expectations for a year 3 breakout, and I still believe in those coming off the injury. So I think he's a guy who definitely deserves to be in the top 12. And when he's back and playing, would not surprise me if middle of the season he's moved up a ton.
Yeah, definitely has to be mentioned in this top 12. Definitely a wild card to start the season already, but I think a lot of people are expecting him to be up in this top 10 area. Honorable mention here, we've got a couple guys we wanted to mention, that just didn't make the cut. De'Aaron Fox having a great season so far, averaging about 26, 5, and 6. Fits really well with the Kings. I think he's playing really well with Sabonis right now. The bench guys for the Kings there, like Malik Monk, Kevin Huerter are all playing well as well. He just looks really comfortable out there, but nothing super elite to kind of crack this top 12 for me. 26 is really good for him for scoring, but I don't think he's going to, pop off for 30 as much as these guys will. And the peripherals aren't just as, the ceiling for his peripherals aren't as high as these other guys. Similar with the next guy here, Cade Cunningham. Obviously, we're Pistons fans, but Cade Cunningham, expected to break out, and he's kind of given it so far. Had a really, really bad game a couple games ago. Maybe one of the worst of his careers, but the scoring is looking a lot better. He's playing more aggressive. The efficiency is not quite there yet, but the peripherals are very good. He's averaging 20 points, 6 boards, 6 assists so far this season. So a strong start, but I think there is still room for him to grow. So I don't think he cracks his top 12 just yet. And then lastly, Jaylen Brown. Obviously, those Celtics pairing is off to a really, really hot start. He could pop off any night, and he has been. Just no assist upside really for him. The rebounding numbers are strong but inconsistent, and then the scoring has been very good, but the peripherals lack a little bit for him to crack the top 12 as well. But Fox, Cade, and Brown all off to solid starts this year.
So that does it for our top 12 updated guard rankings, tiered with the honorable mentions. Let us know if there's anyone that didn't make the cut that you think should be involved as an honorable mention, or maybe even in the top 12. I will say that if there are some players that you think should be on this list and you think we totally missed, we might be labeling them as a forward, just compared to some of these different, site positional placings. So these are our top 12 guards. Let us know what you guys think. We'd love to hear from you in the comments, and we'll see you in the next one.